live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network, and presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola. I just hit a 252-1 parlay, which I'll talk about very briefly on the show today before we get into next week's games, but I'll bring him right in right now. My co-host here on Sunday night, it's Clive Bixby. Clive, how are things going?
What's going on, everyone? How are we all doing?
We're doing okay. I want to actually start immediately with a comment here that we should get to because there's a place for Clive on this channel, not on a reaction show since he doesn't watch football. So this stems from last week. And I remember this commenter from last week. I tried not to bring it up because didn't need to make it known. But Clive was pretty gracious last week because he was really under the weather on Sunday. So we brought him in basically as a game time decision. He said, no, I'm going to do it. And we worked our way through it. But I will say, Clive, anyone who listened to last Sunday's show got some damn good numbers this week. There can be no complaining about your performance last week.
Yeah, and to be clear, I didn't watch Red Zone the way that I normally did. I had 4 games up throughout the entire day. So it's not like I didn't watch the games. It was just such a ridiculous comment that I don't watch the games. But, people could say what they want. I think the results kind of spoke for themselves when we went through game by game.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect. And these are our first reactions to the lines that are coming out. I don't even run my NFL numbers until Tuesday morning. So I can't say with certainty what I'm going to like. But the whole goal of this is trying to get people good numbers and predicting the way that the market is going to move. And if we look back to last week when we were live at this time, there was a bunch of games that we hit on. Kansas City at -2.5, the Vikings over a touchdown on Thursday Night Football, the Rams and 49ers total. We talked about that being way too low at 42. Those is 45.5 today. I'm missing a bunch that we touched on. Seattle, the direction that was going to move from the numbers guys down off of 6. So I think that we actually had a great week all together, and we're going to hope to replicate that again today. Now, before we do, just for those who are new here, structure of the show is pretty simple. We're just going to do a quick recap of today, talk about a few things that I noticed, and then we're going to get right into it. We're going to pull up the Pinnacle odds screen. There's already 9 numbers posted for next week. We're just going to break them down. What we think is going to happen in those games in terms of the line movement on the side and on the total, whether we think the numbers are good. A lot of people are always like, oh, Pinnacle, why would I bet at Pinnacle or a sharp sports book? Well, look at the amount of money that they're taking relative to other sports books right now with the openers. You're not going to get limited by betting these like you might at other sports books. And on top of that, the numbers still move. It's not like the opener is sharp. We've talked with bookmakers before, Chris Bennett from Circa, who told us flat out, the opening number is just a guess, and we let the market do what it's going to do. So that's one of the reasons to bet at Pinnacle. They have great prices. They have good limits on open here. They've been established for 25 years as well. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle. And if you are going to sign up in Ontario, use code HAMMER when signing up. HAMMER. It does help support the show. You must be 19 plus. Of course, please play responsibly. One thing that I think, Clive, we have to talk about is last week was under week. And this week, with the exception of Chiefs, Jags, every game goes over the total. So big correction back the other way. Do we put any stock into these week to week trends, or is this just a matter of now maybe week 1 was just that preseason week, so to speak, where a lot of the quarterbacks who didn't play in preseason came out sluggish, and now this is what we're going to expect going forwards?
I think it's the latter. When you look at the way that the games played out today too, other than that Chiefs-Jags game, ball was moving a lot more today. A couple of defensive scores and special team scores and things like that. But, the ball seemed to be moving a little bit more crisply today. I haven't looked at all of the EPA per play numbers yet or anything like that. And we've mentioned, reaction show. Last year, we had an hour and a half before we started going into this. This year, we're basically starting right after, the games end at 7:15, 7:30. But, offense was definitely up. A couple of teams surprised me a little bit today, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we go.
For sure. The one thing that stood out to me, and I noticed this as I was watching the games today, and then I actually pulled up the numbers. So I'm just going to read the individual sack numbers per team today. 1, 1, 0, 2, 0, 1, 1 2 0 6 1 4 6 0 3 3 3 0 1 1 3 1 4 7. The mode is 1. You'll notice that there's a lot of low numbers there. I'm not quite sure yet if it was just like lack of pass rush or maybe average depth of target being lower, quarterbacks being focused on getting the ball out early, maybe more screen games and stuff like that. But definitely something to keep an eye on going forwards is that like the sack numbers were lower. And I'm going to be interested to dig into the pressure numbers later this week as well. But that's definitely something that stood out to me on the board. Didn't notice anything weird with penalties or injuries or anything like that. That seemed unusual. That was the only thing that stood out to me. All right, let's just get into it. We might as well. We're going to pull up the Pinnacle odds screen. Before we do, if you're in the stream right now, 155 of you, just do me a favor, smash that like button down below. It helps people find our content in real time, makes it more visible. We can help grow this. We can do this forever, basically, if we get the viewership. So just smash that like button down below. And if you're not subscribed to the channel here on Forward Progress, please do so. That really helps us out a lot in terms of, again, growing this all together. Really quickly, was the tweet about the parlay a joke? It absolutely is not. Clive has seen it. I'm not going to post it publicly. Maybe I'll post the verified bet stamp and just like hide the sports book. But the parlay was $10 to win 25-20. 250
Canadian.
$10 Canadian. True. It's like not even real money. It was placed near the end of the first half of the late games, where I parlayed the Washington Commanders at 22-1 to win with the New York Giants at 10-1 to win. It paid 252-1. They both won. It's a real true story. I often do stuff like that to just I would call it account grooming sometimes with some of the more recreational shops, where I just try to make it seem like I'm more of a recreational bettor. It won. There was nothing to it. It actually just won. I didn't think it was like a great bet when I made it. It's just like, yes, that's it. So that's the kind of day it was for me. A pretty solid one on Pizza Buffet this morning and with my individual bets. But let's get right to it. No sense in living in the past. And let's start with what's coming up on Thursday Night Football, with the New York Giants heading to Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers. We'll get the odds up on screen here. Opener is San Fran -10, and the total is 45 in this game. So San Fran, a little bit of, first of all, the Sean McVay thing at the end of that game. I'm not not conspiracy theory, anything like that. I don't know why they didn't just I cannot believe they trotted the field goal unit out to kick a field goal as time expired to lose by exactly 7. They're down 30-20. I don't get it, but that definitely swung some money into different hands, Clive.
Yeah, I can't even come up with a rationale for it, other than, do you want to get your field goal unit a little practice? Is that what we're doing? Other than that, I really don't have any kind of, I can't come up with one.
Yeah, I guess maybe you don't want your players to get injured in the end zone. Your offensive players, Sean McVay, needs to be investigated. It came up in the chat earlier, and I had a good laugh about that. But it wasn't smooth sailing for the 49ers today. Definitely by any stretch of the imagination. The Rams, they were in that game for a lot. The Giants, on the other hand, I don't even know, just the tale of two halves, basically. But we got this one here at San Fran -10, 45. What are your first thoughts here, Clive, if anything, on this game?
I watched the Giants game, and I had the San Francisco game up too. The Rams were able to move the ball a little bit, a couple of maybe unfortunate turnovers for LA there, but the Giants looked horrible in the first half, getting carved up by Arizona. I don't see how Brock Purdy doesn't do something very, very similar in this game. And I'm not sure how bad Andrew Thomas's injury is. I know he was late, not a late scratch, but he was questionable, I guess, all week. If they don't have him, it's going to get ugly. Is 10 too much? I don't think it's enough. So I think it goes more towards San Francisco's direction, 10.5 to 11, as opposed to getting bet down the other way.
Okay, so here are my thoughts on this. I think that this is a horrible matchup for the Giants. I think whenever the Giants face a team that has a pass rush, like we saw with Dallas last week, Philadelphia last year a little bit, they tend to just get blown out of the water in these types of games. If Andrew Thomas isn't there, they have no hope of blocking the San Fran front seven. But I do think that there's going to be like maybe a numbers play on the Giants from somebody in this game. I won't agree with it in all likelihood. I don't see this being a good scenario for the Giants offense. My thoughts, though, are the Giants are staying out west this week, from what I understand. So the Giants would be dumb not to stay out west. I'm almost positive that I read that they're staying out west this week. We're probably going to have a Saquon Barkley injury that keeps him out next week in all likelihood as well. But with that said, the 49ers to me are just like, again, 30 points today. I believe that's still 30 plus in every single Brock Purdy start that he's made for the 49ers. I feel like this is an over team, and these like games are just going to continue to cash over money. Like, I don't think this is a super big edge, and we're in the dead zone. It's not dead, but like between 44 and 47. And I have a feeling that this total is going to be driven up just on like the Giants defense is horrendous. They're horrible.
I would think the 49ers number probably is going to be like 28.5 or 29 for team totals in, depending on what book you're looking at for an individual. So I think 45 is a little light. It's just a matter of how much you think the Giants can put on the board. But I would say 45.5 to 46 is probably a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the comments in the chat, and it feels like I'm the one on the island here that thinks that the Giants might catch money. But if we look at this week and last week, the 49ers got faded in market twice. They got faded at Pittsburgh. They got faded this week with money coming in on the Rams. I don't know. Again, I don't look at the look aheads all that much. I could probably pull it up right here just to see what it was. But I would be pretty confident that it wasn't 10 before this week. And even if we look at this week's games, a lot of the late money, even that came in today, was driven towards like what the advanced line was. It's like, oh, this is this overreaction on this and overreaction on that. I'm inclined to think that this comes off 10 towards the Giants, if anything. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think that's the way the market will react to this.
I think it would have been probably a 9.5 before this week started, to be honest. But I mean, I think with, the Giants kind of showing what they showed and the Niners and then the matchup and Saquon, and I do think it's more likely than not going to go in the direction of minus 10.5, minus 11.
I'd have to go back to last year and like previous years to look at what the market impact from Saquon being out is. It is a downgrade to like Matt Breida, who they have there. I don't even remember who else is on there. Like Tywan Jones is like the backfield is going to be bad for them. Andrew Thomas is the key guy to watch, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that they held him out this week because of, I think it's a hamstring. He talked about how he felt it in practice. It's the Arizona Cardinals. They probably thought they could get away with it this week, and they almost didn't. But him being back, I think, will be a pretty big difference for them. Although, I don't know. I don't hold out high hopes for the Giants to be able to compete in that game. So on my end, no strong conviction one way or another. I feel like this should be bet towards the over, but maybe the Saquon injury just stops that from happening.
This feels like defense turning into offense too from the 49ers, especially if Thomas doesn't play.
Yep.
Daniel Jones hasn't been particularly careful, in making the best decisions either with the football.
Yeah, I think people will look at the Giants' offensive numbers today. 6.6 yards per play. Their series conversion rate was 81%, was one of the highest in the league. Success rate 53%, but it really was all second half. The first half was just horrible for them. What I found interesting and what I liked from the offense in the second half is for once they were finally throwing downfield. They hit Jalen Hyatt. Daniel Jones hit Jalen Hyatt on a deep ball There were targets downfield for the first time in a
Waller was
long
getting
time.
more involved too. There was more 10, 15-yard routes that were getting run, and the ball was actually getting thrown. Daniel Jones wasn't holding on to it too long.
Yep. Yeah. And Mark says, got to be over. Danny Dimes will open up those legs when he gets down. Totally agree. And it just creates like a lot of variance in the form of potential turnovers as well if the Giants have to throw from behind. All right. Next game on the board next week. Battle of 0-2 teams. In the case of the Vikings, probably a lot of people saw that coming. In the case of the Chargers, I don't think a lot of people saw that coming going into the year. Chargers visiting the Vikings. Chargers -1 +100 on the road. Total 51.5. Subjectively, before we get into anything, first thing that comes to mind for me is this feels like an over game. However, I know that these like 51.5 sitting right above 51, key number. I almost feel like the first move will be down in this game to 51. We don't really see these high totals get bet up nowadays anymore, but I'm struggling to see the stops in this game.
I mean, what was the Titans EPA, yards per play, and success rate today? I mean, I had that game on partially, not as much as the other ones, but it didn't seem like they were struggling to move the ball. Tannehill,
they were fine. For their EPA, success rate, series conversion rate numbers, and yards per play were all better than the Chargers today offensively. Yeah. 45% success rate, like not world beating, only 200 net yards passing, but they did get a lot going on the ground. The thing with the Vikings is they have not been able to get anything going on the ground. They've had to pass the ball. This is the defense here. I got to check Herbert's numbers against the blitz, but from what I recall, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league against the blitz. And Brian Flores is one that sends a lot of pressure as well. So I see this as being a high scoring game. Obviously, the opening total reflects that. But oh man, I just don't know where the stops are coming. Unless there's like these long drawn out drives, I just don't see that happening.
No, and I mean, so also this game was probably what, 1.5. If I were to use my numbers going into today, like Chargers probably would have been a 1.5 point favorite. Now it looks like pick most places. I don't.
Well,
see
the Vikings have extra
either.
rest. Yeah, the Vikings have extra rest, but that's built into the advanced line anyways, right?
It is, and here's the other thing too. I mean, from what I saw of the game against Philly, they didn't look as bad as with all the. I mean, the turnovers happened, right? Like they had 4 turnovers. They didn't play great, but it didn't seem like. What's the right way to say this? Last year they were on the right side of a lot of breaks, right?
Yeah.
Now it feels like it's kind of regressing back towards the mean towards that, but overall success rate wasn't bad the way that they played. I mean, I would not be surprised if this gets bet up, and I don't think there's that much of a gap between the Chargers and the Vikings, I guess. Put it that way. Like not as much as the market perceived coming into the week.
Well, I mean, you bring up a really good point because Minnesota's been -3 turnover margin in 2 consecutive games, and they lost. I don't want to say the Eagles game was a close game because it wasn't. They end up covering the spread. It kind of, but like game 1 against Tampa, I think misleading final score. You know, it's actually funny that this is what I was thinking in my head. Like the Vikings are these teams are so they're such mirror images of each other.
Yes.
Chargers are better talent wise. But like you just expect them to always play close games and come out on the losing end of it for some reason. Even though it didn't happen last year for the Vikings, they actually won a lot of these. It feels like they are very similar teams. I think that there's going to be an appetite for people to bet the Chargers here in like a game of like, so we haven't got into, we're not trends guys, me and you, but we're going to see in like 3 or 4 weeks if there's going to be something to like AFC versus NFC. Because going into the year, there was this perception that the AFC is so much stronger than the NFC, right? Like the NFC has 3 teams that can win: Dallas, Philadelphia, San Fran. AFC's loaded. And this is like an AFC NFC matchup where maybe we're a little bit lower on the Chargers because of like they're playing tougher competition. Like, not that I think Tennessee's any good, but maybe there's something there. I don't know. I just don't think that there can be a large movement in this game one way or another, because like the large movement would have to be one of these teams getting to -3, and that's just not going to happen.
No. Would you be shocked if this game ends up going -1, Vikings close?
I wouldn't be shocked. But my gut tells me that it's not going to go that way.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think I think somebody put in chat, people can never quit the Chargers year in and year out. And that's what it seems like consistently is happening, is no matter what the Chargers do, they never seem to get downgraded anywhere near as much as they probably should.
With that said, we often can learn stuff by the way the market moves on certain teams early in the year. The Vikings just got buried this week on Thursday Night Football, like tons of money, to the point where they closed like, I think 5 at Circa, 6 at Pinnacle, was at least 5.5, but that came down a ton. The Chargers was kind of like a back and forth with Tennessee all week, depending on the injury report. And I guess that's something we're going to have to like really monitor this week as well, is how the injuries play out for these teams, because Minnesota had their center Garrett Bradbury out. Their left tackle Christian Darrisaw was active, but he didn't play in week 2 because of his ankle injury. His backup Oliudo injured his knee. It's not good. He's probably out for the year, or at least like a serious injury for him. The LA Chargers, we have the Austin Eckler situation where he didn't play this week. We have Eric Kendricks with a hamstring situation. So honestly, like, to me, the number's fine. It's in like a range where it's fair. I think the most likely scenario for this game is just watch the injury reports, and it's most likely to move towards the team that gets the most players back.
Yeah, and this number at 51.5 doesn't feel like it's going to move a ton. It might kind of go back and forth a little bit through the week. If this closes at 51.5, I think that's probably a good number. I'd actually be inclined to take the over probably at that price, though. That's just where I'm at.
I think, like, I hate the whole like pros versus Joes, sharp versus square thing, but if I had to guess that this will be one of the totals that's like a pros versus Joes type of thing, where I actually would agree with the Joes. Like, it's these totals tend to get bet down towards 51. That's just my experience. And like, I think the most likely closing spot here is 51. If you're just a believer in closing line value, you want to get that good number, beat the market, I think that this is going to come down a bit at some point. I could be totally wrong, but my gut feel is that this ends up just being a shootout. I like both. I like both matchups for the offenses. Minnesota, like I said, they can't run the ball right now. They're throwing a ton. They have to do that. The Chargers should cook this secondary for the Vikings. And if there's like multiple blitzes, Herbert can face that. So, again, I don't feel like strongly about this one way or another. I'm just going to have to like monitor injury reports here this week, because I think that's the most likely way that this game moves.
Makes sense.
Okay. Game number 3 that's listed. Houston Texans on the road at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville looked horrendous offensively today. 4.2 yards per play. That was the lowest number of any team that played today. Success rate, 39%, really poor. EPA per play, -0.26. The only team that was worse was the New York Jets. Pretty uncharacteristic performance from the Jags offense, and they won the turnover battle by 2 and still really weren't in the game against Kansas City. So total is 10 there. Total's 45.5. Jason, if you don't mind, if you can just click the see more on the spread. So we're really at 9.5, essentially. My first thought was Houston went on the road to Baltimore in week 1, and they were this price, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore's better than Jacksonville in my eyes, and I think probably in most people's eyes. I would think that this will come, if like, again, we're kind of in like the 9.5, like 7.5 to 9.5 range doesn't mean a whole lot, but would not surprise me if Houston takes money in this game.
Yeah, I think it comes down to 8 or 8.5. I don't think it. I don't. I could see it maybe getting to 7.5, but I think it closes at 8, maybe 8.5. I don't think it goes as far down to 7.5. I think that's too far.
Jacksonville will be pretty heavy teaser play, I would assume, next week for those who play teasers in that range.
So that's something. I mean, and we could bring this up maybe on another show, but it's something interesting to think about. As teaser prices have changed so much, how much does that really impact pricing going forward now? Because teasers aren't really as discouraged as they once were.
Also, like the teasers early in the year, I'm a believer in the Wong teasers and the math, right? But the Wong teaser is reliant on like having an efficient line, right? And it's week 3 of the season. Like, we don't know what these teams are yet. Like, anyone who's playing teasers today, in my opinion, and like using the closing line as like the true price, I don't know. It's such a small edge. I don't really buy into that. But I don't know. Houston is like, their offensive line is a disaster right now. Like, I mean, today they were without 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen going into the year, including their left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. So I don't really have a ton of interest in Houston unless they start to get some bodies back. Like, they just couldn't. They were blown out. Like, the final score won't indicate this, but they were blown out by the Colts today. Like, it wasn't a game. All of
it wasn't. Not at all.
Houston's success came when the game was completely out of reach. I don't think that they're very good, but like anyone back for them, their defense is fine. Like, this is a big number for Jacksonville. Like, who's Jacksonville? Who is Jacksonville?
Same team as last year, where they're just inconsistent. They have a lot of potential, and are they going to really, execute at the level that they can? They're just an inconsistent team. I have a hard time putting them in that next tier of teams where you probably have like Miami, Cincinnati. Like, I think they're a little bit farther away from that than they were last year.
I'm with you. I think Houston's going to take money. The total, to me, where it is right now, around 45.5. I don't know. I think that's fine. Like, roughly in that range.
Yeah, this is like, we had a bunch of these games last year too, where you have like super high potential offense and then a team that has no offense at all. So it's like a total mismatch. And then if Jacksonville plays anywhere else, it's probably 47 or higher. And, if Houston plays anyone else, it's low 40s, but they just smash it in the middle at 45.5.
All right, we'll move on to the next game. Before we do read the comments in the chat as they come through. We try to incorporate them into the show as much as possible. If you do want to comment in the chat, you do have to be subscribed to Forward Progress. So hit that subscribe button, get in on it. Guess where the lines are going to move with us. We do value everyone's opinion. Makes for a really good community here. And if you're listening in audio form, whether it's later Sunday night or on Monday on your way to work or whenever, and you do enjoy the content, just leave us a review. Let us know that you enjoy it. It does help us grow the podcast as well. And this is available in audio form. Comes out after we upload the video as well. All right. Bills at Commanders. From an ATS point of view, both of these teams like covered considerably today. Buffalo just blew the doors off of Vegas. Washington wins outright as an underdog at the Denver Broncos. We got Buffalo on the road, laying 6 at Washington, and the total is 46 in this game. I don't immediately have a strong opinion here on this one. Like, both side and total seem kind of fine to me. Just my initial perspective.
What do you think? How much of the Bills Vegas game did you have a big opinion going into the game? Because the market did move definitely, away from the Bills today. Not huge. I mean, they didn't go through any key numbers or anything like that, but it did move.
Yeah, it was
pro Raiders.
I don't know what that. I found that surprising. That was like one game where I thought it was going to go in a different direction, and it just kind of kept coming back down. I think it close 7.5 today.
Pretty much
in that range, yeah. And I didn't really have that one pegged. I played over in that game, over 47 plus 100. and it got there, but there were some injuries. And like really Buffalo's offense did what it wanted though. Like this was like, it was the most classic overreaction game from Jets Monday Night Football, where they played a really good defense put in a huge performance. Like all the Bills fans I personally know were like, Buffalo can't win a Super Bowl with Josh Allen. It's over. Brian Daboll made Josh Allen and whatever. It's like, well, he just played a really good defense and didn't have a great game. And then you saw what happened when he played a Raiders defense today, which isn't very good. And they just shredded them. I mean, 450 net yards, 29 first downs, series conversion rate number 1 in the league today at 90.6%, 59% success rate today. And they were leading for most of the game. They held the ball for over 4 minutes, like as dominant a performance offensively as possible. Where do the Commanders rank in there? I don't know. The Commanders are like, their defense is so hit or miss for me. Like they stunk to start this game against Russell. I thought Russ was back at one point today, watching the Broncos tweet early, and then like they finally generated some pass rush late in the game and played much better. I feel like 6 is a solid number here. Like, you know, again, irrespective of like running my actual numbers on this game, it just feels like subjectively this is where it should be.
Yeah, I think if anything, it goes towards 6.5. I don't think it's gonna, like, I don't see a lot of interest in the Commanders at 6. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
I don't think it ever gets to full 7, but I think 6.5 seems probably where I think it would end up.
I can tell you, and again, like me and Clive aren't like big public betting splits guys, but this is going to be all aboard on Buffalo this week.
Sure.
From the average bettor, right? That's just naturally going to be the case. The offense looked amazing again at home against the Raiders. People are like, it's just a week to week league, right? Like Buffalo's going to get way more credit today for blowing out the Raiders than Washington is going to get for going into Denver and winning as an underdog.
And that's a game I'd like to watch, you know, tomorrow. That, cause I really didn't get a good look at Washington at all today. My games were San Francisco, the Jets, and the Giants. So take it all with a grain of salt, people.
Yeah. Sam Howell looked better today, quicker to release, wasn't holding the ball for like 69 seconds per drop back like last week. But I'm also interested to watch a little bit more of it. It wasn't on like my full radar either. Any opinion on a total of 46 here?
I actually think that goes up a little bit. I think 47.5 is the number that I probably would place it at right now. But again, I need to watch the Washington game, but I don't think what's the best way to put this? I'm not too inclined to think that if Washington was moving the ball the way they were today, Buffalo did whatever they want. Denver moved the ball against Washington. I think this, whereas Washington might have been an under team last year, I think maybe it's moving towards an over team.
Yes, I think I agree. Will be interesting to see. Howell did throw downfield a little bit more, but how much of it was because they were trailing 21-3 at one point in this game? That's what I'd like to break it down by game state a little bit more. Someone asked here, is Washington plus 7.5 an auto bet? Yeah, for me, yes. Like I wouldn't think twice about betting Commanders plus 7. I don't know if that's out there or whatever, but I personally would bet that.
Same.
Yeah. Okay, next game. Atlanta, who comes from behind to win today. The weirdest game ever. I'll talk about that a little bit more. But they go out to Detroit, who I don't want to say laid an egg, but like obviously losing as a 4.5, 5-point favorite in overtime to Seattle. Not their best performance. Detroit's laying 4 at home. Total is 47. I do want to point out, because I did make a note of it today, that there was some pretty rough injuries for Detroit. They were missing their left tackle, Taylor Decker, their right guard, Halapulavati, Vaitai. I think I got it right. left the game with what looked like a serious knee injury as well. So they're down a couple offensive linemen for large part of the game. David Montgomery carted off. I don't know how big of a loss that is going to be for them. Amon-Ra St. Brown was like in and out of the lineup. They were saying he had some cramps, but he didn't look 100%. There was a bunch going on with Detroit. Atlanta,
pick six.
Yeah, like a lot of stuff happened. I think Detroit is going to get bet at 4 if they don't have a horrible injury report this week. I think this is like a pretty big correction to where I think the number would have been this week. Like again, Seattle, Atlanta on a neutral this week. Who's favored? Who do we think is a better team? I'm not with the state of the Atlanta offense, which is like no passing game. There's no way I would say that Atlanta is like better than Seattle right now.
No, in no way, shape, or form. I mean, good God, Desmond Ridder tried to I mean, he should have handed the ball to Green Bay a couple of these times, and it was, I mean, the decisions, the actual throws themselves, there was not a lot to write home about, except when he was scrambling. Like, not great.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the Falcons, I got an early number. Thank God I did. I pushed in circa millions with my entry on Atlanta -1, but the box score is going to tell you something much different from I think what unfolded in this game, because the Falcons were pretty successful running the ball. They had 211 net yards rushing, 27 first downs. If you look at the net yardage in this game, they had 220 yards more than the Green Bay Packers, but it never felt at all like the Falcons were at any point dominating this game. It felt like they were just, their offense is so like, I was calling for Heineke for half the game, maybe 3/4 of the game. And that's the point that we're at. They're gonna, like, Detroit's game today was like, they got stopped on 4th downs 2 times against the Seahawks. There was some turnovers. Goff threw his interception for the first time in like a million dropbacks. He was almost like close to setting the record. I don't know. I just feel like this is a little bit too much of a correction on this game, honestly. And I think Detroit will take money.
I do too, and I wonder, like, I'll be interested to see how much more like these market moves come in on Sunday, because there were some bigger moves than I expected. Like, is this a game that's going to hang in the 4.5 and 5 range until Saturday, Sunday, until limits really go up, and then somebody comes in and hammers, and this goes to 6? Is that what's going to happen, 6.5, or does that happen early? It's going to be interesting to watch the market for this game this week.
Yeah, I just think that, so like, either Detroit has been downgraded, which is fair. I mean, you could downgrade them based off of the injuries and the performance, or Atlanta has been like severely upgraded. But like, if you want to call Atlanta and Seattle equals, I'm fine with that. But I generally
just fell down.
Yeah,
sorry.
That was the weirdest thing ever. I saw that. I looked up and saw that as well. Just tripped over his feet. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can get here. I honestly don't. I think that there's still a pretty big gap between, like, think of the Falcons so far. They've played rookie quarterback making his first career road start in Bryce Young in week 1. They played the Packers without everybody today. Like, Packers were a mess offensively in terms of their injury report.
No Jones, no Watson, no Bakhtiari.
Exactly. Bakhtiari out as well, left tackle, which, by the way, I think he's never going to play on like grass or turf again, I should say. I think they just like are comfortable with him on grass and not on turf. But yeah, the skill position players, no Watson, no Jones, Bakhtiari out, like you mentioned, like, it's rough. I don't think Atlanta's had a tough go of it in the early going. I think this is a big step up for them. I honestly do. I think Detroit's going to get bet.
Yeah, I think if you like Detroit, bet them early. If you like the Falcons, wait. And I think the market's going to go that way, and you can get a better number later in the week. Just what I'm thinking. What's the total at?
47. So right on a key number, which is interesting because this is like, I know Atlanta went over today, as did every team in the league except KC Jacksonville. But the Detroit is a pure over team. Atlanta is a pure under team in the way that they play. Like the Falcons run the ball a million times a game. Like over 60% of the time they're going to run the ball. Their defense is a lot better than it was a year ago as well. I don't know. I mean, it's just like I have trouble with these ones where you have these two like polar opposites in what they do.
Yeah, and I mean, so Seattle Detroit today ended up closing at 47 or 47 and a half, depending on where you were looking, and it opened at 51. So that got bet down like heavily.
Yep.
If it's 47 and it's 4.5, what's the implied?
47 and 4.5 is
26, 21 ish.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this number probably gets bet up too. I don't think it goes high, but I think 47's, I think it goes over 47. I think there'll be over money.
Okay. I'm not as optimistic about that. I'm more of I think Detroit's going to get that. I think
that's reasonable.
Yeah. I think most people will like Atlanta in this game because again, what have you done for me lately? Type of situation. Detroit fails, they lose at overtime at home. Didn't look good. Pretty horrible game. Downgrade their defense. Sure, downgrade their defense, but they're playing the Falcons next week. Like, are the Falcons going to be the team that passes the ball up and down the field like the Seahawks did on them today? Like, it's not going to happen.
No, they don't have that level of offense to do that. I mean, I'm just now looking at success rate for Seattle is near 85%. Wow.
Passing the ball, right? I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seattle's
89
EPA
and
per
80.
play, was 22.22 today, one of the highest in the league, only trailing, I believe, Buffalo today. On to the next game. We have the Baltimore Ravens, who looked very impressive today, or maybe it's the Bengals looked unimpressive, but either way, Baltimore controlled that game start to finish. They return home where they will battle the Indianapolis Colts. What's interesting about this game is that it's lined, even though Anthony Richardson had a concussion today. So I would assume that the fact that it is lined, the belief out there by whoever posted this at Pinnacle and whoever's posting it at other books is that Richardson to Gardner Minshew is basically a wash, which I would maybe disagree with in the sense that I think maybe Minshew is an upgrade. But either way, I'm not surprised that there's a line. 8.5 is the spread. The total is 44. What's really surprised me about the Ravens is their defense, because I don't really like their defense on paper. They've been missing Marlon Humphrey for 2 games, who might return next week. Marcus Williams, one of their starting safeties, out today as well. They held the Bengals in check for the vast majority of the game today until, like, I don't want to say score got out of hand, but till they built up a margin. I don't know. This one is kind of, again, in that like dead man's zone between 7.5 and 9.5. And I just don't think it ever goes to, like, makes a move that is meaningful one way or another. Like, is Baltimore going to get up to -10 or down to -7, basically?
What were the pressures like? Like, what kind of pass rush did Burrow face today? I mean, numbers.
Yeah. I don't have his ADOT up in front of me, but he threw the ball underneath a lot.
5.5.
Yeah. And after the game, he did mention as well that he re-injured his calf or wasn't feeling well out there today. Like, take it week by week. So it wasn't like it. If there was a lack of pressure from the Ravens, I think it was more so that Cincy put an emphasis on getting the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly, because he targeted a lot of guys underneath from what I saw today.
I mean, I think with Baltimore playing as well as they did offensively today, and public perception, for the most part, I think of the Bengals is pretty good. I think this probably is going more towards 9 or 9.5 than it would be towards 7.5. I agree with you, by the way, that Minshew and Richardson are probably about even. I think the like when you look at their median performance, it's probably about the same. I think the range of outcomes is different, whereas Richardson can provide much more upside, but I think he's also got a lot more downside.
Yeah.
It's a lot more volatile.
It's this is very small sample size early in the year, but it's actually something that I do find meaningful. Humans have like a bias in which they want to bet on teams that have fared them well and bet
Yeah,
against teams that like regularly screw them or whatever. And early in the year, you get teams like Baltimore who are 2-0 against the spread, who covered both games rather easily. Never really in doubt against Houston, never really in doubt here against Cincinnati. And I think naturally people will want to bet Baltimore because of that fact that they've kind of cruised to these two ATS victories. With that said, I think the line is just fine out where it is right now. Like I don't see anything wrong with it. I'd certainly be interested in a Colts 10 if there was going to be that much money on Baltimore. But as it stands right now, we got to watch Anthony Richardson, and we also have to watch their center, Ryan Kelly, who left the game with a concussion today as well as a notable injury. So that could impact things one way or another. But honestly, I think this is a good opener. 8.5, 44. It's hard for me to guess one way or another.
no, 44 is the number that I had too for a total. 8.5, I don't have enough interest either way. So it's not like I don't have anything instinctively where I want to go. So I would probably just wait and see what injury news comes out and leave it alone.
Got it. All right. We got lots of big spreads next week, man, of the games that have opened. I don't really like weeks like that all too much, but that's where we stand. My favorite team
Feels very
now,
mismatchy. Other
yeah,
than the Chargers Vikings, like just nothing in the 3 area. Like that's the only one that I see that's under 3.
yeah. Looks like the Patriots just fumbled over the middle of the field here. Miami picked it up 3-0 into the first quarter. Okay, Dallas Cowboys. Oh my God, you want to talk about a mismatch? It's the
Micah
Dallas
Parsons.
Cowboys on the road at the Arizona Cardinals. Funny enough, both teams 2-0 against the spread. I would have never thought that about the Cardinals, but here we are. Spread in the game, Dallas laying 13 at Arizona. Total is 44. Okay, so my first thought is that this number is high. I totally understand. Like, I think a lot of people are going to have to make a decision next week of, do I just want to bet my number on Arizona? And I don't think people are going to want to do this. It is just a monumental mismatch on paper. What I do think is going to happen is I think that this total is going to go down. I think it's going to come off of 44 because you now have 2 weeks in a row. Dallas shuts out the Giants. They hold Zach Wilson and the Jets to 10 points. The mismatch that their defense is going to present the Arizona offense, I think, is high personally. And I do think that we're going to see under money in this game, like we have seen for the first two Cowboys games of the year.
So we closed at what, 4.5 today? On average, 4.5 to 5, Giants Cardinals.
Yep.
Not 9-point difference between Dallas and Giants.
Well, we can do it like the transitive property because it's like the triangle, right? Like Dallas played the Giants and the Giants played Arizona. I don't love to do that, but I think it's
it's just a starting point.
Yeah.
I don't have Dallas as 5.5. I guess I do. Shit.
Well, look, so I do like there's obviously websites that do this as well. If you can't create like your own market numbers, for those out there that are following, there's a site called Inpredictable that will do this on a weekly basis. There's some things that are like a little bit off in the numbers. They don't account for like some quarterback situations, sometimes injuries. So I prefer to make my own like market number. This is not what I'm going to bet. This is just like, if these teams played today, this is what I think the price of the game would be. And I think that the price of the game, if they played today, would have been Dallas laying 10.5 on the road at Arizona. When you consider that the Giants were laying 4.5, you look at the difference between Dallas and the Giants, I think roughly we're at that spot or so. With that said, I just I can only see this being like market movement over the course of the week. I would suspect is Dallas gets as high as it's going to go, maybe 14. And then if someone wants to come back in, it happens like absolute last minute where someone hits Arizona. There's no sense in betting Arizona this early, essentially.
No. And I agree with you. I think this number probably goes down at least 1.5 for a total. Like I would say 42.5 to 42 is where I think it ends up, if not more. I think it might be more.
We have seen some big total moves this year. I personally would, if I had to make the total today based off of market implied numbers, I would have made it 43. So 44 is key. It's like pretty key number for people who don't know the key numbers for totals. I hate saying key numbers for totals. It's not like 3 and 7 for spreads, but you have a bunch of numbers like 41, 44, 47, 51, which all have some sort of value. And I'm just inclined to say that the under is going to take money here.
I 100% agree. This is the one that I see moving the most so far that we've talked about in terms of a total. This is the one that I feel the most confident that it moves down.
Is Arizona better than like we give them credit for, or are the wheels going to fall off? Like they've been in 2 games now. It's Washington and the Giants. In my opinion, going into the year, I was not high on either of these teams. So for them to hang around with those, but like this is going to be a massive upgrade in terms of quality of opponent. If they hang around with Dallas, like they might just be way better than we gave them credit for.
Yeah, I mean, 2 bottom third defenses, the Giants and Washington, and they've been able to move the ball a little bit. And I mean, the Giants played so bad in the first half that I think they contributed to some of the Cardinals' good fortune. But I mean, I think where the market has them, maybe you can upgrade them a half a point or a point, but not much more than that. I think their defense is really, 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 really bad.
Yeah.
And I could see it getting very, very ugly. Dallas was playing fast today, too, on offense.
They were. Now, like Dallas didn't run the ball. So Dallas got it's like another game where it wasn't quite the Giants game, but I don't think we learned a ton about the Cowboys. I was way more impressed with their offense than I thought I would be. I think they did a much better job of moving the ball in the Jets than I thought they would. CeeDee Lamb is going to have like an offensive player of the year type of year, I think, right now, with the amount that he's getting targeted. He was able to get open a ton. They didn't run the ball all that well or effectively with Pollard when they were up, though. I think he had 25 carries for 73 yards or something like that. It was less than 3 yards a carry. So like they didn't really milk the game all that well. But that's the way that they want to do it, though. Like they just want to get up out ahead, trust their defense, run the ball. That to me is just like under City.
Yeah, and I think 10 to 13 points is probably what they're looking at for a cap for the Cardinals offense against that defense. And I think it'd have to include something fluky like a penalty or some sort of turnover that gave them a great field position.
Yep. I'm with you. Next game is going to be it's going to be a very similar handicap, except the big favorite is at home instead of on the road. Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead hosting the Chicago Bears. Total in the game is 49. It's really like a 12.5 type of number or like a 12. Yeah, really like a 12, I would say. And the total at 49. I feel very confident. When
you went through your sack number, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you went through your sack numbers earlier, the 5s or the 6, one of them was the Bears, right? I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, the Justin Fields got sacked 6 times.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
So CJ Stroud got sacked 6 times. Justin Fields got sacked 6 times. Ryan Tannehill 5. Russell Wilson 7. Those were the 5 pluses this week.
Are some of these other places watching our show? Because I'm seeing numbers move. I'm kidding. No, but Justin Fields held on to the ball way too long. Another really, really, really bad game. I know you were on Tampa Bay. I was on Chicago. I got them at a decent number relative to close, but it probably was not the right side. I mean, it was just ugly from Fields.
Yeah, so like Chicago, I was trying to lump them in with like other teams that I think that they're being priced in the same range as. Like they're basically being priced like the Washington Commanders and
Carolina.
Like, they're worse than those teams. The Bears are terrible. They're legitimately they do not have a passing game, but like unlike other teams that don't have a passing game, like Atlanta, for example, they have no defense. Their defense is horrendous. They don't get pressure. They can't cover. They can't do anything. Like it's going to be the same. Like this is another one where it's going to be the same. Like I'm going to look at the output of my model. I'm going to be like, holy shit. Like I have an edge on the Bears. How do I possibly bet this? And I'm just going to like probably skip it. If anything, what's the path to success here? I guess the path to success is the Chiefs have had a million of these games under Mahomes and they like have struggled to cover as these big favorites for some reason or another. Andy, the Andy Reid doesn't use the good plays type of game.
Yeah, finally, a little move, getting the ball moving downfield. I don't love it. I have the under in this game, but
you can't complain about a live under that's 3-0 with 11 minutes to go in the.
No. Anyway, I mean, the only way the path to success for the Bears is that Kansas City falls asleep at the wheel defensively, a backdoor cover. Like that's the path to success.
Yeah, like Baker had a 0.34 EPA per play and CPOE of 16% against the Bears. Spencer says Chiefs have had bad habit of playing down to terrible competition the last year or two. Indy and Houston. This is true. This is all true. And this is the NFL. Like I'm not suggesting nothing can happen here. Again, I think that this is just going to be, it will follow the same path as what we typically see with big favorites in the NFL, where the big favorite takes money early and then potentially the dog catches some money at post. But this is a monumental mismatch. The only thing is like the Chiefs offense really hasn't been good at all. Like it was all the drops last week. Today they played the Jags defense, which the Jags defense is definitely, they're definitely bottom 10 in the league, I would say. I feel confidently in saying that they're bottom 10. The Chiefs had a 38% success rate on offense today. 4 for 13 on third downs. Not the best performance. Tons of penalties for Kansas City today. 12 for 94 yards. The Jags got flagged just twice. But what do we do here? Like, I don't really know how I do anything with this game at this point.
I think the market, from a total perspective, is pricing this Bears offense as if there's something special. I think Kansas City is trending downward versus what their probably market implied offense looks like. I feel like 49 is way too high in this situation. I don't know if it gets as low as 47, maybe 47.5, but this is not I don't have much interest in the side, but I do have a little bit of interest in betting the under.
What was the final with the Bears and Bucks today? Which I can't remember.
27-17 with that weird pick six at the end of the game.
Yes, which was like a screen pass directly into the defensive lineman's hands. So it was really Barrett, 20-17 till that point. Yeah. Now, granted, I mean, obviously there's going to be a price where you play whatever on the game, right? I would be scared to death of KC scoring like 42 on their own here, which can happen at any given time. But honestly, KC like seems content to play we haven't seen the explosive plays until the final drive today to seal the game where Mahomes threw downfield to Sky Moore. Everything was kind of underneath. It was a slog. And again, that wasn't a good Jags defense. I'm inclined to agree with you. We also had like a situation where the Bears were trailing a lot today and had to play fast, and like they couldn't move the ball to come back from behind here for the most part. So tough one. Honestly, really tough one. I
I don't know
haven't.
which way this spread moves. I mean, I don't think it goes to 13 and a half. I think maybe it goes to your point, right? Like a lot of people are going to have their numbers and it's going to be 12 and a half and 12. That I think that's probably where it maybe ends at 11 and a half, 12, somewhere in that range.
Well, that's the thing about both of these games, right? With Dallas, Arizona, and well, KC more because the number is more 12 here. So, like, for it to move significantly, you either have to go down to 10 or to 13. I would say it's more likely to just go to 13 at some point, and then you see if like someone who has value on the Bears plays the Bears at that
Sure.
point. I think the true number is somewhere between 10 and 13. It's just a matter of whether or not anyone is going to bet the Bears in market now. Again, like what I talked about off the top, right? Like early in the year, especially, it's the what have you done for me lately? Not that like the Bears were like a public dog today. Not that I care about where the public is betting, but a lot of people bet Chicago as an underdog today, and they lost that bet. And even in week one, I don't want to say that they were public, but like a lot of people came back in on Chicago late there and they lost. They got smoked. And the games haven't really been close. So it's more so, you know, what's most likely to happen. And honestly, I don't know. I don't know, but it's just a huge mismatch one way or another. Monday Night Football, we have the Philadelphia Eagles who have extra rest because they played on Thursday last week. So it's 11 days of rest against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. Eagles minus 6.5, total 45.
Another 2 Monday night games.
We do have another 2 Monday night games next week.
Ugh.
Yes.
All right.
Now, this is the last game that we have lined at Pinnacle right now. The rest of the games that aren't lined are either teams in action right now or will be in action tomorrow night. I can give some like rough thoughts, but on those other games, but obviously like whatever happens tonight and tomorrow night is going to have an impact on the rest of those. But this one in particular, Eagles minus 6.5. The Eagles, there's something about them right now that's just not jiving with me.
Not in sync. That's kind of what I would describe. Like they don't feel like the Eagles of last year. Doesn't mean they can't be. It just doesn't feel right.
This is inherently challenging because you have Tampa Bay now 2-0. The Minnesota victory was pretty fraudulent in my opinion. Today's victory was not, but it was against a horrible team in the Bears. So it's like a pretty massive step up in class here, right? To the Eagles. And the Eagles haven't really played well yet, but they've won both games by 5 or more points. They were pretty comfortably in the lead against the Vikings. I think it's very hard to put a read on these teams right now. But Philly, 2 weeks in a row, big opposition to them. New England takes a bunch of money in week 1. Vikings take a bunch of money in week 2. The trend is your friend, some might say. And I've noticed this with specific teams over the years where the market just generally may like them or hate them for the majority of the year. And I'm not saying Tampa is necessarily the right side, but I think that this number is more likely to come down than to close at 7.
This is where I have it. Like if I line the game today, right? Like I have it at 6.5. I don't upgrade Tampa. I don't downgrade Tampa. I don't think they did anything particularly special today. I think the Bears played like absolute trash. There is something to be said for doing your part of the job and just getting the job done. To me, this is probably going more towards 6 than 7, to your point. And I do think this is a team. Tampa is not going to be a team that's going to be liked by the public in any way, shape, or form. And I don't. I think it's going to take a while for market sentiment to catch up, if there's anything to catch up to.
So that's very interesting because Mickey Hill in the chat says market seems behind on Tampa, which okay, I'm interested for people who are in the chat right now. Like, where do you
Please.
rank? Where do you rank Tampa Bay in the league? Tampa Bay is the Xth best team in the league right now. What's the number going to be? Because going into the year, if we were looking at season win totals, they were like in the 30th range, right? Like there wasn't much lower than them. It was Arizona, Houston, and then it was like them and Indy, basically, right? So they were like in the 29-30 range. Where do people think that they are right now? Because if we're going to say the market is behind on Tampa, let's try to establish where we think that they are. So DeCucci says 23rd. Connor, 22nd. Bottom 8th. So this is like 24th. Matthew says, I have them -3.5 to average. That would be in the range of like 25th to 26th right now. Anthony, 24th. So this is where people think that they are. I'm going to tell you where the market has them ranked based off of the point spreads in the last 2 weeks. And that's somewhere in the range of 23 to 24.
Yeah.
See, Mickey is in a different story here, and that's fair. He says 15. Harry says 20. So if you think that they're really like 15 is above average, are the Bucks an above average team? I don't know. I think that's like too much of a stretch, right? Like,
So I tend to like to look at things in terms of tiers, right? Like, if you guys, one person to follow, Computer Cowboy, like he tends to do like a market derived rankings, which is I think some function of unpredictable and something else.
yep.
I mean, if you're moving Tampa up to the 15 to 16 range, then you're having them in the same tier as like New England, Tennessee, New Orleans, Pittsburgh, Atlanta. I don't have them there. If you have them in the 24 range, you probably have them with the Giants, the Jets without Rodgers, and who else am I thinking of? Maybe
Las
Washington.
Vegas.
Yeah, Las Vegas,
Yeah.
Washington, like at the 2.5 to -3 to average. So it
Yep.
depends where you have them. I mean, do I have them above Chicago, Carolina, Indy, Houston, Arizona? Yes, but that's where that tier ends to me. That's just me.
Yeah. So like is Tampa worse than the Giants in Washington, right? And the thing is, we don't know anything with certainty. Like we're all making educated guesses on spreads. This is the third game of the year, but we have the two Tampa Bay games to me are not giving us anything because they from a box score perspective, they should have lost to the Vikings by double digits. Now they
Hmm.
didn't because the Vikings fumbled 2 snaps in that game. Center to quarterback exchange. Tampa Bay turnover margin was +3. They mostly got outplayed until the fourth quarter when they ran some hurry up stuff. And finally, Baker Mayfield was able to do something against a bad defense, right? That's that. Today, they play the Bears. We don't know. Like, we don't know. The numbers they put up offensively against the Bears today were not great. Like 43% success rate, right? Now, granted, they were leading for most of the game. They didn't have to, but they got to 15 third downs in that game. They went 8 of 15. Like that 19 first downs in the game as a whole. It wasn't like a superb effort. We don't know enough. And like quality of competition matters. And I think we're almost getting to the point where we might be talking ourselves into the Bucks being something that they're not.
Yeah, and it feels like a light version of what people thought of the Vikings last year. The Vikings were a little bit better, more towards average, but you know when they had a 13-win season or whatever it was, like their numbers surely didn't reflect that. I would say too, outside of a Mike Evans 70-yard reception where he just basically shoved off the defender, and you know that's a big chunk of yardage. And I know shit like that happens every week, right? But
yeah.
that's obvious. But I mean, that one was so obvious of how he got open and how he got downfield after the catch. I don't know. I think the market has Tampa probably right, like, and not much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think that we can put them anywhere near an average team now, like because of two games where one that they should have lost handily and one against the Bears. That's my point. Now, I
Sure.
don't disagree with this comment, Spencer. Like I think this is totally Evans Godwin versus banged up Eagles secondary is a product. Maddox is probably out for the year. Bradbury, I think, is still nursing the concussion. Reed Blankenship, there's one of their starting safeties, is out as well. That's an issue. But conversely, you're going to have Carlton Davis. Like if Carlton Davis misses the game, the Bucs secondary, they don't have the corners to cover Devontae Smith and AJ Brown either. So
That's it.
I mean,
Yep.
there's a lot. Is Hurts hurt? That's a good question. He just doesn't look great right now. But anyways, listen, I don't want to make it sound like I think the Bucs are more likely to take money. I know when I run my numbers, I almost certainly won't have an edge on the Eagles. I don't think. I'll be surprised if my model spits out an edge on the Eagles in this game. So I'm more likely to bet the Bucs probably, but I don't think we know anything about the Bucs yet. Like they still have Baker Mayfield as their quarterback, and he still is going to do things that are going to drive you insane.
Yeah, and I got to be honest. Like, I mean, the Bears' defense is not good, and plenty of holes. I mean, Jordan Love diced them up on third down last week, and Baker did okay this week. But I mean, if you're only putting up 20 points of offense against the Bears, I know they had a lead, but it wasn't impressive.
Yeah. Do the Rams 2 games give us something Tampa's do not? Question from Scott. Okay, so here's the thing, right? We need we need enough data on these teams for it to stabilize, right? And typically that's going to happen like around the 6 game mark where you're really going to start learning and having more confidence in your rating of teams. And typically that happens in like game 6, 7, 8 of the year. With the Rams though, it's McVay and it's Stafford. And like those guys are a more of a proven commodity, right? Like I don't think the Rams are very good. I think their defense has issues, but like if Stafford continues to perform at this level for the remainder of the year, it's not going to be a surprise to me because they have good coaching in McVay and he's been a good quarterback for a long time. If Baker Mayfield performs at this level for the remainder of the year, I will be more surprised. That's not to say that he can't do it, but he has a longer track record of not doing this either. So I think that even in 2 game samples, you can have more confidence in one team because they're more of like a proven commodity, right? Than another
We
team.
talked about it with priors last week, right? Like having a prior and an expectation on Richardson as a quarterback versus Mayfield, who we have a pretty large sample on. Like, why would we think all of a sudden that something's changed? Like the first quarterback that I could think of where that's really happened a little bit is Geno Smith last year.
Yep.
Uh, but I don't have Baker Mayfield in that camp of Geno Smith type performance early in 2022 versus this year 2023.
Yeah. We've somehow moved on to the Rams, but I did want to touch on this today because Stafford isn't getting hit, a big data point from last year. So, one thing I noticed in the limited amount of time I watched 49ers Rams today, and I'm going to watch this in full tomorrow, is how well the Rams offensive line held up in that game. Like they were blowing the defensive line off the ball on a lot of these plays. And I found that surprising, but that O line could be a lot better than people realize overall. John asks, he says the beard is gone. Did you lose today? So actually, this is a true story. It's not for me to like Barry Horowitz, pat on the back or anything. I shaved because my wife told me I need to shave. She's like, I'm done with this. Get rid of the beard. I've mostly been a non-beard guy in my life. I shaved. I had probably the best NFL Sunday I've had. I'll do the accounting tomorrow in maybe 2 or 3 years today. It was just a very, very good day all around. A lot of volume, a lot of winning bets. Was wrong on the Lions, which ended up being a small play. Wrong on the Bengals, which ended up being a small play. But everything else hit in some capacity. Yeah, the beard is gone, but it worked out. Let's touch on a few other games that aren't open yet, and not a lot of line movement now so far. Just like again, I don't know about you, Clive, but it's felt to me like last week when we were going through the board, I was like, oh man, some of these are bad numbers. This week, I don't feel that way. I again monitor the Detroit injury report, but I feel like the Lions are going to get bet this week. I don't think the Falcons are like with this passing offense can go into Detroit and really win a game or steal a game. Like they can, obviously NFL, but like it's not apples to apples with what Seattle was able to do today. That's kind of what I feel the most strongly about, but maybe I'm out to lunch there.
No, I agree. That's the only one spread that I see moving a decent amount. I mean, like even for some of the games that have look aheads for teams that are playing, only 2 of them are under 3. So it's like there's none of those. There's just a lot of games that are 4 or more next week, and a lot more than 7. It's hard to have a lot of those move all that much when they're in some of those dead zones. But did we talk about the total for the Eagles Bucks, or do we not want to do that?
No, we can definitely. So total's 45 for this game.
Okay.
Total's 45. There's injuries in the secondaries for both of these teams. That's why I would be reluctant to go near and under. I know the Eagles offense doesn't look the same, but number 1 corner for Tampa. I mean, let me see the status of Carlton Davis. I don't remember if it was a long-term or like he was never going to play this week. It's a toe injury. I'm not sure. But if you look at these teams, the injuries are like, with the exception of Kenneth Gainwell, who is out this week, the injuries are on the defensive side of the ball, right? Tampa's without Kalaya Cansey, Carlton Davis. The Eagles are without Nakobe Dean, James Bradbury, Reed Blankenship, Avonte Maddox. So I would suspect that this catches money towards the over, but could be. I don't know. I don't feel strong.
Yeah, and we closed at so it opened 43, the Bears versus the Bucks today, and ended up closing at 41, going over by accident, so to speak. But I think this probably is something that goes over too. I don't think this goes towards 44, 43.
I don't know. I mean,
it's
primetime unders. No, is it actually a primetime game? Yeah, it is, right? It's Monday night. It's the first Monday night football game. You're gonna get the primetime unders trend.
It's true.
As if the Eagles didn't just have a primetime over last week.
Yeah. And why isn't the Rams Bengals? Is that still not up on Pinnacle?
Well, it's not.
Is it Joe Burrow?
It's got to be not. It's got to be the Burrow injury. He came out himself after the game and said he re-injured his calf. Like,
got it.
He now. I don't know what the Bengals are going to do with him. This number is going to be very interesting because I only have Pinnacle up. Full disclosure to everyone else, I don't have an odd screen up right now, right? So I'll just randomly guess here, right? But this cannot. It's insane that I'm even saying this, but the Bengals have been so bad that they are not going to be favored by a touchdown, more than a touchdown next week at home. And if you told me before the season, we're going to go into week 3 and the Bengals are not going to be like double-digit favorites at home to the Rams, I'd be like, you're insane. But yeah, so okay, this is what we see at Legals here. Robert says -6, 46.5. Yeah, like that's where it has to be at this point, because you have a quarterback that's literally hurt, that has been garbage for 2 games and is coming out and saying that he's actually hurt. Super Bowl rematch from a couple years ago, the revenge spot for the Cincinnati Bengals. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, it's the Bengals have been downgraded more than anyone, I have to say, so far, right?
Yeah. Out of all those top third teams, I think the Bengals have moved down the most. And out of the bottom third teams, I think probably the Rams have moved up the most.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I think
so.
Tampa or the Rams are the teams that have like moved up. The Jets have moved down the most of the top tier teams, but that's because of the Zach Wilson injury, obviously.
Yeah.
The Aaron Rodgers, yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Scott says Westgate Summer had Cincy minus 8.5. Yeah, like it's nuts,
That
but
makes
it's not
sense.
going to be a touchdown. And it's like I'm at the point now. I bet the Bengals today -3 in like I don't remember what we averaged in terms of our price, but it was like -112.5 or something like that. So that was a loss. But I'm at the point now where like I need to see the Bengals offense do something before I can
Something.
reasonably
Do
bet them.
something.
Yeah.
Like,
Like I mean, they were horrible last week. This week, okay, success rate wise, way up, but their EPA was not good. So that indicates to me, like again, a lot of short completions, things underneath. Yards per play, 4.9, only 66 yards on the ground. And that was them going 10 of 15 on third downs. Like they had to convert at 67% on third down just to produce what they did today, which was nothing. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, and
I don't
I'd
know.
like to see what the numbers were at different game states too, like when they were down 2 scores versus less than 2 scores.
Yeah. I can't believe they actually had a chance at one point. Like, I mean, their defense couldn't get a stop. Defense couldn't even get that's like another thing to this. It's not only been the offense. Like today, Baltimore's offense was grooving for the most part. Baltimore had 58% success rate today. 58%. 26 first downs. Didn't turn it over at all. 5 touchdowns. It's not 5 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. I don't know. This is tough. And you got it. Robert does bring up a good point. Plus, the coach knows the spread. You know, if it comes down to it, McVay might send his kicking team out there late in the game.
That still is bizarre. I did have the Rams in like one of the pickup contests I'm in, but
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
pretty ridiculous.
And that would have been 7.5 then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, what a dream.
Backdoor cover.
Yeah. The game I'm most interested in for next week that's not lined yet is Patriots and Jets, personally, because we saw like the Zach Wilson train wreck game today, which, like, no surprise, it's against the Cowboys. But are they going to be dogs at home to New England, especially if this New England game, well, I mean, New England just picks up a first down and moves to the Miami 30. But if New England loses this game and doesn't cover, like, are they going to be 0-2 against the spread and go out on the road at the Jets and be favorites? Like, that's the game where like Mac Jones like gets just annihilated by the Jets defense. I would say Patriots Jets over under 29.5.
Yeah, and I have a hard time. Like I am no Zach Wilson apologist in any way, shape, or form, but like I don't want to overreact either to today's game of like him just running for his life. Like he's gonna have nightmares about Micah Parsons, just nightmares.
Yes. Yeah. You will have the Bill Belichick against rookie quarterback trend because Zach Wilson still plays like a rookie as well. So that'll come into play.
I mean, I could see it like at this point, like I'm not going to downgrade the Jets all that much versus what I had them at in the market. I don't know. I do think that they're probably slight dogs at home, 1.5, 2, something somewhere in that range, with a low total, really low total.
What's the lowest total we've seen this year? Like 38?
Yeah. What was that? Was that today?
We saw today Washington, Denver, I think was a super low one. Yeah, we saw 38.5 is Cleveland, Pittsburgh tomorrow. Jets, Dallas today was 38.5. So how can Jets, Patriots be more than that? It can't.
Right.
It can't. Indy, Houston today was 39. Yeah, that'll be a low total, probably like 37.5, 38.
Yeah, that's gonna be gross.
Yeah, that's gonna be a pretty gross one.
That's what brought up the trends comment that I made to you earlier today too. Like action had something like 70% when totals are 40 or less in week 2, and there was like 6 games under 40 this week. 0-4 today.
Yes. Jonathan, you mentioned Dak is greater than Allen this morning. Any update? Yeah. Did anyone watch Josh Allen play today? He was like an absolute machine. Like, this isn't the day where I would be saying like Dak is greater than Allen after that performance from Allen. They had a 90.6 series conversion rate, man. It was like absurd, the Bills offense today. It's probably not the time to rehash this. Yeah, I was impressed with Dak. I was. But I'm not. I'm like, what's the precedence for Dak being greater than Josh Allen? And there is none. There is none.
Raiders defense is really, really bad.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's in fairness. You're not learning much from that. Out of curiosity, for those in the chat, did anyone play anything so far that they feel really strongly about one way or another? I'm curious to see what like the early sentiment is for next week. I can tell you going into week 3, you're going to see a lot of like trend-based stuff on teams that are 0-2 against the spread, teams that are 2-0 against the spread and whatever. I don't really put much stock into that at all, but I'm just curious if anyone out there likes anything. Man, like I don't even have numbers on the game yet, but I really want to see the Detroit injury report and whether or not they get their left tackle back. But yeah, Cottage, I played Minnesota and Detroit, like both. Okay. Rams plus 6.5. So that's at the Bengals. I don't blame you right now. Just laid Seahawks minus 4.5. So Seahawks will be playing Carolina. Ooh, I like Carolina tomorrow night, so I wouldn't lay that now. Not saying it's a bad bet, but because I like Carolina tomorrow night, I wouldn't lay that now. A lot of people like Detroit here. Titans plus 4.5. That would be against the Browns. So it's the same type of situation where like Browns play tomorrow night. Could be interesting. Spencer played KC, Chicago under 49. So we have a pretty good mix of stuff in here. Bills commies over 40. I'll never get sick of calling them the commies, by the way. That's why I like that they named themselves the Commanders. Yeah.
So is your Carolina play tomorrow more pro Carolina or anti New Orleans, or a little combination of both?
It's kind of like the same thing of how I ended up with Washington again today against Denver. I don't think there's some teams, in my opinion, that are just not built to win by margin, and New Orleans is one of them for me. They have a very poor offensive line, especially the interior. Their left tackle, Trevor Penning's been horrible against a good pass rush team with a quarterback that historically has struggled under pressure. They don't generate much of a pass rush on defense. Like, I'm just not high on the Saints, really, is all it comes down to.
Yeah. As we've talked through these numbers.
Yeah.
What's that?
The Panthers stink, but I like it's the same as like playing Washington. Washington stinks, but like you play numbers for a reason. This is why the point spread was invented. You play your numbers, right? It evens things out. Yeah. Packers minus 1.5. I see a couple times in the chat here. That's also going to be an interesting game because they play at home to the Saints next week. And again, like it'll be interesting to see who's back. Christian Watson is back finally from his soft tissue injury. That'll be interesting as well. Reminder for everyone out there, I'm hosting live watch-alongs for Monday and Thursday night football all of the season this year. You're in for a real treat tomorrow night because we got 2 Monday nighters. So we're starting the stream early tomorrow. 7 o'clock, I'll go on the air for the Saints and Panthers. I'll watch a mix of that and the Browns and Steelers. We're just going to mix it up over the course of the night, have some fun with it, have both games going on at once, and see what we can do with that for our watch along tomorrow night. That's over on the Hammer HQ. If you're not subscribed there, make sure you do subscribe to that. We actually had a pretty sick Thursday nighter this week with the Eagles and the Vikings. The chat was off the hook. It was very fun. So tune in for that if you are around. And here on Forward Progress tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time, I would highly recommend it. Obviously, I'm going to highly recommend it because it's part of putting the content together. But tomorrow, G-Stack George with Clev TA and Suma. It's a recap show. They break down their biggest takeaways from the weekend, how you can apply those going forwards. They're going to look at some early spreads. There's a lot going on here on Forward Progress. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure you smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and of course, give us a like as well. Appreciate everyone tuning in here on Forward Progress tonight. Thanks to the chat. Got a lot of good opinions here tonight. For myself, Rob Pizzola, for Clive Bixby, Sunday Night Under Prayer. and for our producer, Jason. This has been Forward Progress here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. We'll catch everyone next time. Good luck with any bets that you have this upcoming week.